It is time for Around the 412 with Smitty and Tyler.
Welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. I am Tyler. With me, as always, is my co-host Smitty. Go follow us on all of our social medias at Around the 412. Also, check us out on YouTube and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. Also, follow us on all the listening platforms like Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcast. And check us out in the description of the show. We got all the links to our great sponsors. We have a link to a golf outing, which Smitty will talk about. But what I'm going to tell you about is as of a couple days ago, Rockin' Around the 412 kicked off. July 1st comes around. Rockin' Around the 412 is back. It is year 8. If you don't know what that is, it is our Christmas fundraiser that we've been putting on for the past 7 years. And it's where we raise money to be able to provide children in this local 724, 412 area codes the Christmas that Smitty and I had to never worry about where it's coming from growing up. So with the help of everybody that donates, we're able to provide gifts to specific children and specific families. We get to try to get a list of everything that they want, but we also partner with the East Rochester Salvation Army and adopt kids off of their angel tree. And there will be more info about that as we get closer to the Christmas time, but there's multiple ways to get involved this time of year. And I mean, when I say this time of year, it's literally July and this is a Christmas fundraiser, but there's tons of ways to get involved with this. Where we've hit, what did you say? 177 kids have been provided Christmas. Yeah. We'll probably cross over $40,000 raised just on the GoFundMe alone. Hard to track with the angel tree how much is actually given in those, but if you're including that, probably I would guess for sure over 40,000 already. So wanted to continue to do that year in and year out. This is our baby. This is what we look forward to every single year. So if you're interested in that, the GoFundMe link is going to be in the description of the show. It's pinned on Twitter. And it's going to be mentioned from now all the way up until a couple weeks before Christmas. So if you want to get involved, please help out. Please share the message any way you can. It really appreciate it. But yeah, we have a golf outing, and this is the last week that you can sign up for the golf outing in August. So Smitty can tell you a little bit more about that, but you got to act urgently because you might miss your sign up for your foursome.
Yeah, Saturday is the last day to register for the Horse Nickel first annual Sarge Memorial golf outing at Fox Run Golf Course. That is Saturday, August 16th at 9 a.m. So Saturday, August 16th is the event, but you have to register this upcoming Saturday, July 5th for the event. Again, Fox Run Golf Course, Saturday, August 16th. Register your foursome by July 5th for the event. Spots are filling up quickly. Can't get everybody in there, so make sure that your foursome is in there. Man, that's really tiptoeing the line, I feel like. But make sure you that you get in there to participate. So excited about that. Obviously, I will be there for the event, not participating, but I'll be around hanging out, making sure everything goes smoothly. And friend of the program, Pat Fryermuth, donating jersey as well. Very excited about that. And I know this isn't the Steelers show, but if you missed that, had Pat on the pod last week to talk about Aaron Rodgers and the wide receiver room and a lot of other stuff. So be sure to go check that out if you haven't already. But this is the Pens pod, and that coward Jesse Marshall backed out on us, Tyler. So just you and I wanted Jesse on here to talk about the 2025 NHL entry draft, obviously, and also knowing that this was going to be the first day of free agency. So would have been a great conversation with him, but alas, he has to be a husband. He has to be a father. Something I can't relate to.
I fully empathize with him too. Like he said, I was informed by my wife today that I have plans, and I'm like, listen, I'm a husband. I get it. There are several times where I have no idea I have plans, and I'm informed last minute. So, which I then am told, no, I told you a month ago. I'm like, oh, okay, well,
true. So we're going to get Jesse on here, and it doesn't make sense for us to fully dive into something we're going to end up fully diving into. And to be honest, I don't want to speak for both of us, but at least for myself, like if it wasn't for the likes of Jesse and Jace on Twitter, I would be so out of the loop in terms of these prospects. I'm not going to sit on here and pretend I know what I'm talking about when it comes to these guys. So we can briefly go through the draft haul, if you will. But I'm not going to give you some fake analysis that I've read from other people and just spew it on here as secondhand information. We'll get Jesse on here to properly break it down when we get him on here. But we're not the guys for this. I'd like to think I know puck. I just don't pay attention until the guys are already in the NHL, basically. Even honestly, if somebody wanted to have a conversation about AHL hockey, I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. I do not pay attention to it. So,
yeah,
full transparency. But I definitely was tuned in for that, whatever they called it, draft that the NHL decided to put on display.
This the worst like formatted of a live draft that you've ever seen?
Yes. Like, so I was already like, dang it, the NHL draft is on ESPN. I gotta watch ESPN. So then I turned it on and I'm like, this coverage is gonna be awful, which it was. And then the format of the draft itself, not only the coverage of the draft, but the way that they had it formatted. My God. Like, and people are like trying, like people that cover the league are trying to, make it seem like this is what the league wanted and this is what they voted for. When they voted to have the draft done this way, they were just voting for the teams to not be in the person. Like, they were not voting for this.
They were not voting for just a complete, like, abysmal of a draft.
You're not voting for Leah Hextall to be given, post pick interviews. Like, that's not part of that. Like, so it's just all around the
or
way that
Skype
this thing was
interrogations after the picks were made.
And then like, oh, the Bruins won. My God, because like they lost the feed or whatever. So like the people that are the GM and or whoever is part of that group that was there, like they're on the screen and we can see them, but they can't see the player and stuff like or hear the player. And it's just, yeah,
well, and
like it just
like every single time. And who I think this is maybe on the Steve Dangle the podcast. They brought this up. Every single time they make a pick, you have the GM or not the GM. You have to have Bettman coming across the stage the entire time, and it just coming back. It makes no sense to me. It made it even longer than it had to be. A centralized draft, I feel like, has to be the move going forward for the NHL if they want anybody to be invested into watching it next year, because it was just a disaster. And I mean, I don't know, like every single league, I think, has a centralized draft. I don't think there's like, I don't think there's a decentralized draft outside of what the NHL did this year. It was awful. It was awful.
They're trying to 2020 NFL draft this COVID year. Basically.
Yeah, except the difference is we don't have Gary Bettman sitting in a chair in a recliner. And
yeah, I'll be honest, I kind of enjoyed the way that they
I thought that was together, fun. I thought it was funny.
But yeah, this was not good. And another thing that I want to touch on is obviously shout out to Matthew Schaefer and everything that he's been through. Really cool moment. It was awesome that they put the patch on his jersey and everything like that. How many times were they going to make that kid talk about his mom? Like, we get it. And I'm sure like he probably wants to put the spotlight on her to a degree, but we're like on pick 6 or something at this point. He goes over to the panel to talk to them and Bucci just goes, so what do you miss about your mom the most? Like, what are we doing?
Like what?
Like, so yeah, I mean, obviously very, very sad and delicate situation to navigate.
But that would be like Bucci asking that is just like all puck, no personal skills. Like that's how that dude knows how to talk.
Yeah. So I don't know. Just speaks to again how awful I thought the coverage was. Megan Chaika, I thought, did a nice job. Like, it was kind of like the I don't know, needle in a haystack, if you will, for the coverage. But yeah, overall, I thought it was awful. Let's talk about this a little bit. This is definitely not the name that I expected at pick number 11. There was actually a lot of chatter leading up to the draft that the Penguins wanted to move up from this selection. And maybe McQueen was on their radar. I'm not sure. There was obviously a lot of talk about Eklund, who ended up having to wait a little bit to hear his name. But Ben Kindle ends up being the first round pick, 11th overall for the Penguins here. Playing the WHL. He's out of British Columbia, just 5'10", 181 pounds. I think that's probably why there's some skepticism about the transition. Again, not going to pretend these are my thoughts. Just listen to the way that people talk about him. He also, just based off like quick glance from the perception that I was seeing, I think analytics community probably higher than like the general consensus.
Sure.
I was seeing some boards that had him like as the 8th overall player in this class. I was seeing some people that had him like as low as in the mid-20s. So the pretty vast range for where people like definitely a first round pick, but going this high, I think it was going to have to be a team that kind of looks into the underlying numbers more than others potentially that was going to have to pull the trigger on him early. So I don't know. Anything to say about this pick?
I watched some highlights of him after he was selected. Got to be honest, didn't really know much about him prior to him being selected, but whenever he was the pick, I looked into him, and what I saw excited me a lot. Like, I know he is a smaller player, but you tend to see more of that in today's NHL. We'll see how that continues to evolve in the game itself and how that the league continues to evolve with that. But 99 points in 65 games in Major Junior, like, that's nothing to scoff at. I feel like 35 goals, like that, the skill is there, and it'll just be interesting to see how that involves into the NHL level. And like we said, we don't know a ton about these prospects, so we're not going to spend a ton of time on them. We're honestly probably not going to spend a ton of time on many of the other ones. He was just the major first one that was selected by the Penguins, but they did actually end up having 3 first-round selections, which is something that I did not see coming. I thought maybe they trade up and they only take 1 first-round selection. They end up getting 3. The next one being Bill Zonin, another guy that was playing Major Junior, another center. That's an interesting thing that they did is drafted 3 centers in the first round.
I think they needed it. I mean, I think if you look at the cupboard in the age, honestly, even lower than the A, with what they needed, I think it makes sense. I think it's always going to be easier to transition if they don't work out at center than they go out to wing, than drafting a wing and just knowing that they're either going to stay there or transition's not going to happen at center. So take a guy that's at least playing in that prime spot right now, the most valuable spot. We just spent the Steelers episode talking about the value of corner and safety, right? And I think that that's a similar conversation here. Center, clearly the more valuable position. So if it's even like a coin flip, you take the center. And then obviously if things go south, if he's not able to take on the defensive responsibilities, or if he's that bad in the face-off dot, then you can always move him out.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, watching him too, I watched highlights and little packages that were put together of the 3 first-round picks. Didn't really spend a ton of time on the other ones. But it excited me too. I think that he has some skill, but he also has a little bit of fire to his game, which I like, a little bit different than Kindle, the first selection for the Penguins. So that excited me too. And then William Horkoff, another guy in the first round, 2 picks later after Zonin. Yeah, traded up for him. Not the name that I think that I nor several people watching the draft were thinking that he was going to trade up for. I was tuned into Jesse Marshall's his space on Twitter as well, listening to him, and that's not who he thought they were going to trade up for. And right after they traded him, who
was still on the board at that point? Was it defenseman?
The one that I believe they were talking about, it might have been a defenseman. There was also a goalie that I thought that Jesse said that they could trade up, or if they were trading up, that could be who they were getting for it. But I think that the Penguins definitely answered a call in drafting centerman in the first round, and also Kindle's a little guy, but when you look at Zonin, who's 6'2", and then Horkoff is 6'5", like they definitely added some size.
NHL bloodlines, by the way. If you recognize that last name, his father, Sean Horkoff, played in the league for quite a while. Edmonton Oiler, Dallas Star as well. I remember him with the Oilers mostly.
Yeah.
Not that I'm saying he's going to be his dad, but I think if he turns out to be that player, it's a nice back end of the first round pick.
Yeah, sure. I think maybe Ravensbergen is the goalie that they was talking about.
Oh, okay.
Or also Lyndon Lakovic, a left wing, that's the one that I definitely remember Jesse talking about. So Horkoff, not the pick that people thought about, but interesting player. And then just going through some of the other selections, we're not going to spend a ton more time on this. The next 2 were defensemen Peyton Kettles and Charlie Trethewey. Then they took
Peyton Kettles, 6'6", 195. I think that this is the one, just looking at the measurables, jumped off the page to me. I believe he was also teammates with Pickering at one point. I thought I had seen that. when they were in Winnipeg together, like in juniors. So that would certainly be something to see if they end up, playing with each other down the road or anything like that. But yeah, 6'6", and just the way that he moved, they were showing a little bit of a highlight thing on him. I think that's the one to watch for me to see how that development path goes.
Sure. Charlie Trethewey, like I said, is another defenseman that they took right after him in the third round. They had 3 third-round picks, the next one being Gabriel I think it's Daigle. I don't know if it's Diego or Daigle.
That's the goalie?
That's the goalie, yeah. And then they took Brady Peddle, another defenseman. And then they had a couple more forwards. In the fourth round, they took Travis Hayes. In the fifth round, they took Ryan Miller. And then when they went back to defense in the fifth round and took Quinn Beauchene. And then in the fifth round, they also went back to forward for the rest of their picks. Jordan Chiron in the fifth round. Sixth round, they took Carter Sanderson and Cale Dock in their seventh round pick. 13 picks for the Penguins in this draft, including 3 first-round picks, 7 guys taken in the first 3 rounds. This is the most players drafted by the Penguins since 1996, 97, and that is back whenever the NHL draft had 11 rounds too. So I feel like if you're just going for the ratio, this is by far the biggest draft by number of players drafted in Penguins history, and also looking at how many picks they had in the top 3 rounds, 7 picks, including 3 first rounders. I'm curious to see how this all plays out. This is definitely like a wait and see. I don't necessarily think that you have anybody that is going to be vying for the NHL right away. Even Kindle being at the 11th overall, still going to have to wait and see how he plays out. But I feel good with the first real draft of what I would call like the rebuild era for this team. Like I think we're officially in it. Like everybody's kind of accepted it. We know that what's going on, and having the quantity mixed with what looks like some of the quality as well. I feel pretty good about what Kyle Dubas was able to do in this one. And obviously wait and see how a lot of these playing out. I'm curious to see what Jesse, whenever he comes on here, what he's able to fill us in between the cracks of what we don't know on pretty much all of these players. Excited to see how he talks about that. But yeah, a lot of draft picks this year for the Penguins. Something that we haven't really seen in our lifetime, honestly.
Yeah. When we do Jesse on here, we're able to talk through this. It'll certainly be a game changer. What's going on, everybody? Smitty from Around the 412, and I just want to take a quick second to give a shout out to our folks at Game Changers. Their logo on the screen right now, right above my microphone. Over 2,000 different designs in their catalog. Luxury heavyweight material. I am wearing one of their shirts right now. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Head over to gamechanger.la or pick6.la to pick up some shirts. And guess what? Use code AT412. Save yourself $10 on your order every single time. Again, gamechanger.la or pick6.la. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Check them out. Probably as long as we've gone without playing that first ad, so I had to work that in. Certainly not my best work, but we made it work. Free agency started today as well, and in past years we've gotten accustomed to this to the Penguins being big spenders on free agency, being one of those teams always linked to the top names and making big splashes. Not right now, as you mentioned, with where we are in our window. If anything, we're going to see pieces moved off the roster via trade over the coming days and weeks. In terms of signings, they're obviously going to make some here and there. You got to fill out a roster. They bring Connor Dwyer back. They bring Philip Tomasino back, which I really like bringing Tomasino back for sure. Oh, wait, can we talk about too? They made a draft day trade that we talked about with them. They moved up in the second round. We knew that they would probably want to try to get back in the second round. How do you get a second round pick for Connor Timmins? What am I missing there? Like, I thought in sheltered minutes, like, he was fine, but like, I was like, second round pick for Timmins?
That's just good work by Kyle Dubas, I guess.
I mean, I understand that they took on a not great contract there in Connor Clifton, but like, it's 1 year at 3 point whatever million, like 3.3 or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. So the Penguins are in a very unique position because, and I say unique not because teams haven't done it, but it seems like everybody else around the league isn't in the same spot. The Penguins are. Like, they're the team that is very clearly the most willing to deal their talent that's on the roster. And also, if you're willing to give them assets, take on your bad contracts. So I think right now the Penguins are in a very advantageous spot. And also how bad the UFA class is. Rakell, Rust, Karlsson, how attractive do those guys look right now compared to what's out there in free agency? So we'll talk about that in a second, though. I guess we can kind of go through the other work the Penguins did here with outside additions to the team. The one that I have not seen actually confirmed by the team yet, but I saw put out there was Anthony Mantha, which is certainly interesting. A few years late on that. I wanted that to happen back when he became a Washington Capital. But this is your prime, like, hopefully he's got some gas left in the tank and you flip at the deadline move, if you will. Massive frame, big body forward who we've seen be able to pot, 20, 25 goals in the past with some consistency. So there's that. These signings all announced together. Justin Brazeau, Parker Wotherspoon, and Caleb Jones. Wotherspoon, like an analytics darling. I know he was on the third pair there in Boston, but like that J-Fresh hockey card looked very nice. So we'll see if there's impacts, if he can continue to provide that type of impact when he's on the ice and maybe moved into a larger role. Mentioned Tomasino and Dewar. And then Alex Nedeljkovic traded to San Jose for a 2028 third round pick. Again, Dubas is doing this thing where it's like, yeah, I'll wait, a year later to make sure that it's around earlier. Like, did the same thing with the Ruido trade where it's like a 2027 fourth because he's willing to wait it out a few years. So
that's what I thought whenever this happened. When I saw it was a 2028 third round pick. In my head, I was like, okay, so if it was a 2026 pick, it was going to be a fifth rounder. If it was a 2027, it was going to be a fourth rounder. And so they decided to wait all the way for 2028 when it was going to be a third rounder. He just, I get the tactic of getting the better pick.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just funny to see it happen several times.
I mean, also, let's think about it. Do I think the Penguins are going to be like all the way back in contention by then? No. But if they are in a position where they maybe are buyers at that point, I mean, a third round pick is obviously much more valuable than down the road. So could be setting up not only because you're getting the better round to make the selection, but also if they're going to end up being future trade assets, they're much more, they look much better to other teams as well. So while the Penguins are on the opposite side of that right now, they are the sellers. Once they are buyers, maybe this pick is in that window. Again, do I think they're going to be at that level? Not necessarily. I think this is going to take some time, but just wanted to throw that thought out there as well. The Nedeljkovic trade, though, what do you make of this? Do you think that Yoel Blomqvist just immediately steps into that role behind Tristan Jarry? Is he going to play more than Tristan Jarry? We've seen Tristan Jarry lose confidence of the coaching staff in the past. This is a new coaching staff, but you could go both ways with that argument, right? Like this, they have no allegiance to either of these goaltenders. So curious to see how it plays out.
I don't know that I necessarily think that he's going to step in right away and play more than Tristan Jarry. I think that Tristan Jarry is going to be on the opening day roster to start the season just because I feel like it's going to be nearly impossible for Kyle Dubas to move on from them. If you put Kyle Dubas up on the lie detector test and asked him, or do you want to move on from Tristan Jarry? I bet the answer would be yes as the truthful answer. I just don't think it's going to be possible. So I, for one, am excited to see a different goalie tandem. At least on paper, it's going to be a different goalie tandem than what we've been used to for the past several seasons. First, it was Casey DeSmith and Tristan Jarry. Then it was Tristan Jarry and Alex Nedeljkovic, which was fine at first, and then it started to sour a bit. And then we got a little taste of Yoel Blomqvist when he first came up. Obviously, the second stint wasn't as good as the first stint, but I trust that a off-season reset can reset that play as well, or at least I hope it can.
Do you still have faith in that with them bringing back Andy Chioda?
I wish they would have moved on.
Stunned.
I don't know why. I don't know why they kept him.
Internally, the thought apparently is that it was more about the defense and the goaltending. But my pushback on that is we've seen this. They've interchanged some goal. Like Tristan Jarry's obviously been there, but whether it's been Jarry and DeSmith or Jarry and Nedeljkovic, they're getting the same results. And how do you keep bringing back? Now I understand they traded Nedeljkovic now, but you're still keeping Jari and you're still keeping Andy Chiodo, who are problem 1A and 1B, in my opinion, with what's gone wrong with the goaltending. I think it's like the defense wasn't that bad this entire stretch. They've gotten bad goaltending. Last year, you want to make that argument? Sure.
Yeah, I think that it's tough too, because I wonder how much the front office thinks, is it Andy Chiodo versus just Tristan Jarry not being able to respond to what Andy's trying to do with him. And
well, if that's the case, again, you're bringing both back though. Like I know, but I think that I guess it just depends on how much they trust in Joel Blomqvist and how much Andy Chiodo's able to change him. Because what I think is going to happen is that's going to be the tandem to start the year, and I don't think that you're going to see a true backup role. I think it's going to be fairly similar to what you saw with split time with Nedeljkovic and Jarry, and that's at least how I would approach it too. I think that would be the smart move, because I don't think that up to this point Tristan Jarry has proved anything to you to just say that you're going to be the starting goaltender and Joel Blomqvist is going to be the backup. I think that at least to start the year, it should be an open competition, see how those goalies evolve, and maybe the defense does play better in front of them, and that way you find out if it was truly the goaltending or not. Like I said, if it was up to me, Andy Chiodo would have been gone. I would have just hit a hard reset on like the entire coaching staff and not kept any pieces of it, and let Dan Muse bring in whoever he wants and bring in his guys, because that's, in my opinion, how a organization would probably run best under a new head coach. But it is what it is. Andy Chiodo is going to be around, but I do think that Joel Blomqvist is going to be a 1A to Tristan Jarry's 1B, or vice versa. I really think that at least to start the year, they're going to split time, and then maybe one goaltender takes over for the other, because we've seen it in spurts. Like Jarry could still play well at times, but it just always seems to come back to him falling into a cliff and falling and being able to prove to everyone in Pittsburgh that he's just not the guy. And so it's an immovable contract. He's going to be here. That's just the frustrating part of it all for me. But as far as the Nedeljkovic trade goes, I am happy that it's going to be a different tandem. I'm happy that Joel Blomqvist does not have anybody outside of Jarry blocking him from a starting goaltender spot, and being able to get those reps and get those starts in net, seeing how he can evolve as a goalie. Eventually, like, all eyes are on Murashov as far as the future goes, and I think that rightfully so. So we'll see how Joel Blomqvist kind of responds to that, because he was talked about in that light too for a while. So I want to see if he's able to be better at the NHL level like he was when he started the season last year, as opposed to his second stint in Pittsburgh. But the Nedeljkovic trade doesn't surprise me at all. I thought it could have happened last season, like during the trade deadline. And so that one, I think it's just good business, getting a decent pick in the third round for a guy that is on an expiring deal that you weren't going to re-sign anyway and probably should have moved on from. I think that's just good business from Kyle Dubas. Yeah. We'll talk about the moves that have not been made yet when we come back. But quite frankly, you know how we feel about the goaltending. As of late, just hasn't made the cut. Smitty from Around the 412 here. And while I may not have much hair, the hair that I do have will not be cut by anybody besides Keith at Keith's Barbershop. My friend Christian Circle, been with us since day one. Keith's Barbershop, located 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Download the app, The Cut. Book an appointment with Christian today, or you can do walk-in with Tony or Ashley. But again, Keith's Barbershop, 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Go check them out. Old school vibe in there. Absolutely love it. Cannot recommend them enough. Wouldn't go anywhere else. Maybe I'll see you there. I want to know where you stand on the Erik Karlsson, Rickard, Rakell, Bryan Ross potential deals. Are you somebody that is like adamant that these need to take place? Should it be more on the other side of things where it's like it's got to be a haul? Where are you at with individually, not collectively here? You don't got to talk, put them all in the same bucket. But those three names, I think, are the ones to talk about and watch in the coming days and weeks for this team.
The one that I think that should take place is Erik Karlsson. I think that they brought him in to try to squeeze out some contention from this team. It didn't work out ultimately. He's played 2 seasons in Pittsburgh. I don't want to necessarily say all of it's been a disappointment, but we didn't just get what we thought we would get out of Erik Karlsson. We didn't get a contentious window. We missed the playoffs in both seasons. So I think that it would be best to move on from him.
Do you think it's the fair to, because I don't want to put words in your mouth, but just my thought on it is the tenure has been a failure, but I don't think the player has been a failure.
Sure. I think that the motive behind making the trade was a failure, but I don't think the player individually was a failure.
He's been basically what he was. Like anybody that was expecting to have 101 points because he did the previous season, that wasn't going to happen. The offensive impacts are still awesome, and the defense is pretty much non-existent. He's what you knew we were getting. It's just with the way that the rest of the roster is, it didn't work.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I think the motive behind making that move, that's what the failure was. Not that necessarily I thought that they shouldn't have made the move. I was excited when they made it, but they didn't make the playoffs. They didn't have a contention window in his tenure with Pittsburgh, and that's why I think it's a failure. Not necessarily Erik Karlsson himself. He is who he was, and I thought that individually by himself, he did what he was going to do and what I expected him to do. The Penguins just didn't capitalize on having him here, but I would move on from him, and that's the one that I think should happen. And I think that there's a very highly likelihood that it will happen. I just think it's going to take the right suitor, and so maybe you see a move made before Erik Karlsson, but I think that prior to training camp, I think Erik Karlsson is going to be gone from Pittsburgh. I think that he's going to be moved on from at some capacity. Don't know what the team is going to be.
Well, there was a lot of talk about Carolina, and I was going to ask if you feel like that trade for Keandre Miller takes them out of it, or if you feel like there's still a shot of them being the suitor.
I don't know what their cap situation looks like, but I feel like Keandre Miller and Erik Karlsson are different enough players where I don't necessarily think that takes
They're
them out
different
of
enough
it.
players. Yeah, I just was wondering from a money perspective if they could make it work.
Yeah, I mean, I'll pull up the cap real quick, but I think that they could be a player. Another team too that I think could be a player because of recent news with Alex Pietrangelo is Vegas. Getting him in Vegas, and I mean, if you're going to want to go to a team that's going to compete, Vegas competes every single year.
Well, he might be back in the 100-point contention.
Yeah, and so I think that could be a team that makes sense, but maybe they have to figure out the money and everything. The Penguins are currently no longer retaining on anybody, so I'm sure that there will be some salary retained in a trade for Erik Karlsson, but I don't think that it's going to be an if Erik Karlsson gets traded. I think that he will get traded, and it's another one of those things where I just think it's good business for the Penguins to move on from him. So we'll see what happens. Current cap space for the Carolina Hurricanes is $19 million. So I would say that they have the cash to be able to do it.
Yeah,
I'm
there's a lot
assuming
of talk about them.
Of the cap going up. It's got to be because of the cap going up, because I'm looking at
is Miller accounted for?
Yeah, he's accounted for on this.
They are very much in on Nick Ehlers, and I think would probably like to take care of like that big fish forward before looking at another defenseman. That's just my thought on it personally. Well, so
I'm looking at their Puckpedia right now on their roster breakdown for their contracts. They don't have a lot of guys that like are on expiring deals in the upcoming season, and it's already accounting for everything this season. They still have $19 million in cap space. So if the Penguins were to retain a few million on an Erik Karlsson trade, I still think that they could go after some bigger fish in the forward market and still be able to make a move for Erik Karlsson. Like say the Penguins retain like $3 million of it, and his $10.5 million cap hit turns into $7.5. That's the same as what you just got Keandre Miller for. I think that could still make sense. You know, you would only have it for another 2 years, which you would think that is well within Carolina's contending window. So I think it would make sense. I think it would make sense for Vegas, but Erik Karlsson to me, it's not if, it's not when, it's if. Or excuse me, I'm saying that wrong. It's not.
You're on the right path.
Not if, it's when.
Yeah. I'd agree. So obviously I want your opinion on all of them. I I would say that's most likely, and then Rakell and then Rust. Are you in agreement with that? And
I do agree with that. And I think that with Rakell, it's more so a trade, not because like the Penguins want to trade him. I think that it's more so it just makes sense because of where they're at in their just fresh and starting a rebuild. You have a player that just came off a 30-plus goal season. His value is going to be at the highest. And we talked about it at the trade deadline, how it made the most sense to trade him then. Why would you wait for the offseason? Well, the offseason here, they didn't trade him during the trade deadline. I feel like push is going to have to come to shove, and they're going to trade him now. He no longer has a movement clause that you have to really worry about, and I think that he's going to be gone as well, I would think. And I think that I would rank the likelihood as well, what you said, with Erik Karlsson being the highest, Rickard Rakell second, and Bryan Rust third. Rickard Rakell, to me, I just think it makes too much sense to like fuel your rebuild as well. And I even think that you could probably get a higher return for Bryan Rust as opposed to Rickard Rakell. But I think that Rickard Rakell is more likely to be traded than Bryan Rust, because Bryan Rust to me is the interesting one of all of them, because he has a factor that I don't think the other two have, in that I think that there is just so much respect for that player in the locker room and in that organization that the other two, not that they don't respect those guys, it's different. Like Bryan Rust has worn a letter whenever other players have not been able to go in some of these games. I don't think that the Penguins are doing that, and that means nothing to them. I think that means something to them. And I think that Bryan Rust is arguably one of these leaders that you would like to have through a rebuild as well. But at the same time, if you're able to get some assets from him, if you're able to get blown away by a team and get a good return for him, trade him. I understand the business side of it. But he, to me, is different than the other two just because of how I feel like he is viewed in that locker room and in that organization. I just think that he is looked at in a different light than the other two, and someone that, even though we could trade him and could get assets from him being in that locker room and being on the ice with especially some of these younger players like he once was whenever he came up in Pittsburgh, I think that has value in and of itself as well. That it's not really tangible value like draft picks and players are, but it's something that organizations are going to be able to see.
You thought about the impact on the younger players. I don't want to overplay or over-exaggerate this, but we've talked about it in the past when they ended up dealing Gensel. Like, from Sidney Crosby's perspective, you're watching all these guys go out the door. And I'm not going to go down the path that we saw, the disgusting display on that awful draft coverage of talking about a Sidney Crosby trade. But I do think that's not going to happen. He's not going to get to that level. But I think that there's going to be a part of him where it's like, well, this sucks. You know, all these guys are walking out the door. I want to start and finish my career in the same place, and I'm still going to do that. But I don't know. There's got to be a part of him that is watching that happen and not pleased by. I'm think.
Sure. And here's the thing, though. And I feel like this is something that nobody who talks about a Sidney Crosby trade brings up. If you are the Penguins, if you are Kyle Dubas, you have to have had conversations about Sid and being realistic about where the team's at. Like, I feel like everybody ignores that he is definitely in on the loop of what the team is going, the direction that they're going, and how he fits into all of that. I feel like everybody that talks about him going to Colorado or going to Montreal or going anywhere just completely forgets that how much respect and how much regard he has within the Penguins organization, which seems crazy to say out loud, that I think that people forget that. But it's not like he is going to be left out of the loop on anything. And I feel like if there's a player in the NHL that is going to have more say than anybody, it would be Sid. And so if some of these things are happening, I'm not saying that necessarily Sid disagreeing with something is going to stop Kyle Dubas from making a move, but I'm sure that he has Sid's opinion. And I'm not saying he has to get his approval, but Sidney Crosby is definitely in on the loop of every single transaction that the Penguins are making. And I feel like a lot of people that talk about Sid being traded just forget that.
Yeah. No, that's the only point that I was trying to make was, how much does that matter in this scope? Because I agree, you got to do what's best for business at the end of the day. But I think that there's always going to be that part that wonders about the opinion of Sidney Crosby for as long as he's here.
Sure.
So
now,
I don't know
if they tank and luck draws in their favor and they get Gavin McKenna, suddenly that rebuild might be a little shorter.
Mm-hmm. They're trading that 2028 third they just got from the Nedeljkovic trade to be buyers at the deadline.
I wanted to ask you about this on here, and I wanted to talk about it with Jesse too, but I wanted to ask you about it on here, just the two of us too. How do you view the 2025 Penguins season? Because I feel like for pretty much every sport, well, not every sport, outside of the Pirates, we go into the season hoping for the best out of the season and hoping for the best out of the team. But I feel like what the best is out of the 2025 Penguins isn't what the traditional definition of getting the best out of your team is going to be. Now, I'm not saying that I think that they should openly tank. I think that that's really hard to do. And whenever you have a, 18 or 20% chance of getting that first overall pick anyway, even if you were the worst team in the NHL, like the odds are stacked against you no matter what, even if you're the worst. But are we at a point where we are, because we got there during the 2024 season, mid-season, are we at a point where we know going into the season that it's probably best for the Penguins to not be that great and we can accept that?
Yeah, I think that's what's different about this year is we're going into a season acknowledging where this team is at. You don't have that level of disappointment when they're not that good because you're expecting them to not be that good. I think that's the difference between the 2025 season as opposed to every year that they've had since the 3-year playoff drought started. So I'm actually, oddly enough, looking forward to this year because it's individual things that I'm looking forward to. Sidney Crosby continuing to be a point per game player. If this really is going to be Gino's last season, I think that's obviously going to be a huge thing to watch, and we'll see what's left in the tank, who his line mates are. I think is going to be a big part of that. Hopefully able to prop him up and send him on his way on a high note. Again, we'll see if that truly is the case, that it is his last season. But again, just pointing that out there. And all the young players, like, what is Rucker McGroarty? I think Koivunen, showed some promise last year. What is he going to look like if he is a full-time NHL player? Like, if they do move on from these vets, it's going to open up spots. And how do those young guys perform in those spots? I think it's what we talked about with the Pirates, basically now being translated to talk about the Penguins, along with Sidney Crosby. So that's kind of how I'm viewing this year. And I think that's how everybody should be viewing this year. Like, go into it with lower expectations. And if you understand where this team is at, I think it makes it much more palatable. And you can still find some things to look forward to on an individual level. Just if you're expecting the team results, I hate to break it to you. Again, look at what the Penguins are doing and look at what everybody else in the league is doing. Everybody else right now, even the teams that were bottom feeders, are right now trying to get better. The Penguins are the only team that's been open for business with selling off their assets. That tells you everything you need to know about where the Penguins are.
I agree with everything. I'm going into the season hoping to see some elevated play from some of those younger guys. Honestly, that's what I'm really looking forward to, is trying to see as many young guys get playing time as possible this season. And then the chips will fall the way they fall whenever it comes to how the season's going to shake out. If they get a chance to draft Gavin McKenna, obviously that would be amazing. But we'll see what happens. I think that going into next year's draft, the Penguins should feel, Kyle Dubas should feel optimistic about what he's building right now. I think that, like, as far as being a competitive team, sure, they didn't get there in the first couple years that he was here, but everything that he's done so far when it comes to the rebuilding side of his job, I have liked, or I've been supportive of, and I've learned more about, and I've liked what he's been doing. So I'm curious to see how that's going to continue to move forward.
And that's the other part of what I said. Like, if expectations and reality meet, it's easier to accept. And that's what we're expecting to have happen this year. the other part of that is I think it's easy to accept being bad if you can trust the vision. I think that's where, again, the last few years, the Penguins have been bad despite trying to be good. So now that like they're in this spot where they're not trying to be good and they're probably going to be bad, but they at least have a viable path forward with all the assets that they're collecting. So I think it's easier to trust that vision.
And, they're kind of due for a first overall pick. So just saying.
Yeah. 20 years.
Yeah. 1984, 2005, 2003 technically, but they traded up for it. 2026 wouldn't be too bad.
Yeah. All right. Well, anything else to add?
No, that's it. Curious to see what other moves are going to be made. I'm sure. I mean, as of recording this, it's the first day of free agency, so I'm sure that some other maybe small moves get made by the Penguins, and then we'll see what the big moves are made as far as trades going out are going to be. But it's going to be interesting.
I mean, imagine. I'm curious. If Dubas is going to continue to prioritize the draft picks in these trades, or if he wants young talent as opposed to maybe a combination of. But imagine if it is just all draft picks and they trade all three of these guys, what that cupboard could look like.
Oh, yeah.
In
3
years.
Listen, I feel like a team that shouldn't trade their first overall or first round pick should be Buffalo. But like Bryan Rust has been linked to like Buffalo having interest in him. If you can get those idiots to give you a first round pick in this year's draft, like an unprotected first round pick, you do it. Because that's just extra fuel for the lottery.
They should fire Kevin Adams if he makes that. Like before he even makes that trade, fire him so he can't do it. Like ownership should be like, you want to do what? And immediately fire him. Honestly, what about Detroit? Hometown team, Stevie Y. They were right there last year on the cusp of a wild card. True. I think that could be very interesting. And if I'm Rust, that's probably, a spot where if you asked him where he'd want to go to. Yeah.
Could you imagine losing Minka and Rust, two of our highest profile interviews ever in one summer?
Yeah, I know. It's very possible. And the one
we both said on the Steelers show that Minka, if you're just going by high profile, is probably the clear cut number one. Would you say Rust is number two, like a two-time Stanley Cup champion?
Yeah, people probably know. I mean, even though Bryant McFadden's two-time Super Bowl winner, but I'd say Rust is probably better known. It's close.
Maybe there's some recency bias to that.
Yeah.
But
yeah. I don't know. Alex Highsmith? Twice?
Pat twice?
Yeah, he don't count. But yeah, we'll see. Bryan again is going to be one of those guys, regardless of what happens, obviously be rooting for. But yeah, maybe right now is the time to do it. We'll see. We'll see what takes place. Maybe next week when we're having a conversation on here, we could be talking about the fallout of some of these moves. But be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell if you were here on YouTube. Be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, you will find us there. Just search Around the 412. And regardless of where you are watching or listening, go to the other platform and do the same. Absolutely free. Best way to support us. Check out the links in the description wherever you're watching or listening to this. All of our sponsors down there. We talked about them. Keats, Game Changers. Those links are down below, as well as, this is where I feel like I'm opening up a scroll to read everything off now with Rocking Around the 412 back in the fold. But we talked about it at the beginning. It's year 8 of doing so. The link is down below. You donate. Every single penny goes to helping kids in the 724 and 412 areas have the Christmas that they deserve. Tyler and I had growing up. You donate at least $10, you'll be eligible to win a plethora of prizes that we obviously haven't announced yet. It's only July 1st when we kick off this mission, but Tyler has been giving away Pens tickets every year as part of this, and no promises, but he potentially threw out Lower Bowl happening this year with how bad the team is going to be. So maybe not looking like the prize right now that it has been in the past, but Penguins tickets, a bunch of autographed memorabilia, Pittsburgh sports wise. So stay on the lookout for that. Again, please donate if you can, share, You never know whose eyes and ears you're going to get on this thing. Talked about it. Did we talk about actually, I don't even know if we talked about the golf thing at the top of this one. Definitely talked about the Steelers show, but I never know. These things start to run together. Horse Nickel, first golf outing. I decide when I'm going to throw in that word annual when it comes to the first, but I know Sarge hates it. Saturday, August 16th, 9 a.m. But you got to register your foursome by July 5th. So this upcoming Saturday, by the time you guys are watching, listening to this, time is ticking. Saturday, August 16th, 9 a.m. Fox Run Golf Course. Register your foursome by July 5th to be eligible to play in it. Make sure you secure your spots for your foursome over there. And again, we talked about all of our sponsors, but we missed one right above Tyler right now, Marcelo Electric. Look at that logo. Marcelo Electric serving Beaver, Allegheny, Lawrence, and Butler counties. Hit them up 724-614-0611. Residential, commercial, service calls. He's got you covered. Again, Marcelo Electric, 724-614-0611. Whew. I feel like I need my inhaler. But yeah, that's everything. Hit us up at Around the 412 on all of our socials. Be on the lookout. More giveaways to come. We just gave away an Aaron Rodgers Game Changer shirt. Going to have a Jalen Ramsey one probably on the way when that one comes out. But they got some Pens designs over there as well. So be sure to go check those out. Save $10 when you use code AT412. But yeah, hit us up on all of our socials. Drop a comment down below. Anything you want us to talk about in an upcoming episode. How you feel about anything that we talked about on this one. All that good stuff. But for Smitty, for Tyler, this has been the Around the 412 Pen Show. We'll see you next time. Maybe Jesse will be here. I don't know. But we'll see you when we see you. Bye-bye.